Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating conflict unfolding right now in the Indian real estate sector. We're looking at a scenario where a top-tier developer, one that's literally renowned for its incredibly strict corporate sustainability goals, has just hit a massive, totally unexpected environmental roadblock. It's honestly the perfect case study of what happens when an ambitious, green corporate vision collides head-on with strict, on-the-ground ecological enforcement.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. First, Brigade's green ambitions. Second, the Chennai project roadblock. Third, the wetland controversy explained. Fourth, Brigade's legal defense. Fifth, the market implications. And finally, number 6, real estate's ESG era.
Section 1. Brigade's green ambitions. To really appreciate the irony of the current roadblock, we've got to look at Brigade Group's established baseline first. 2045. That is the year Brigade Group has publicly committed to hitting net zero. And they haven't just made a casual pledge. Their entire corporate identity is heavily anchored in long-term environmental stewardship. They're framing their whole mission around responsible resource consumption and actively combating climate change.
And you know, they actually have the hard data to back it up. Look at these specific ESG commitments. They are aiming to be entirely water positive by 2030, and they're already diverting nearly 86% of their project waste away from landfills. Add in over 100,000 native trees planted and a massive 61% jump in their use of green building materials, and you've got a developer that's actively championing eco-innovation, which makes what happened next, well, kind of a shock.
Section 2. The Chennai project roadblock. Let's pivot from those idyllic green goals to the sudden, harsh regulatory reality that just dropped in Chennai.
So the crucial point is right here in this data snapshot. The project is Brigade Morgan Heights, located in Perambakam, Chennai. It's a pretty substantial development, slated for about 340 residential units. But check out that final status. The State Environment Impact Assessment Authority, or SEIIA, has officially revoked the project's environmental clearance. Just like that, the project has gone from active status to an immediate, mandatory administrative standstill. Construction, marketing, the whole shebang, it all has to halt.
Section 3. The wetland controversy explained. So how exactly does a developer with platinum-rated green buildings just lose an environmental clearance? Let's unpack the core conflict here neutrally.
We are basically looking at two completely different perspectives on the exact same piece of land. On one side, the SEIA and the State Wetland Authority claim that Brigade violated condition number 9 of their January clearance. That condition explicitly required them to get permission from the Wetland Authority before starting work, which the authorities allege just didn't happen. On the flip side, Brigade Group maintains that the project sits on private Patal land. That means private ownership, and crucially, they state it is definitively not an officially notified wetland.
The ecological context here is absolutely vital. The project sits right near the highly sensitive Palakarani marshland ecosystem. This area is actually the focus of a proposed 11,000-acre Ramsar zone of influence, which is a designation for wetlands of international importance. Environmental activists have been fiercely opposing large-scale construction in the area, arguing that building near the marshland threatens its critical ability to moderate floods, recharge groundwater, and conserve local biodiversity. It's a highly scrutinized, incredibly fragile zone.
Section 4. Brigade's legal defense. Faced with this sudden revocation, Brigade Enterprises obviously hasn't stayed quiet. Let's see how they're officially responding. And this brilliantly illustrates their exact stance. Here we have the official press release from Brigade, where they push back hard against the SCAIA's decision, calling it legally unsustainable, factually incorrect, and arbitrary. Their main defense? It rests on historical land records. They assert that the site has been classified as dry land, or punjai, in revenue records going all the way back to 1935, long before modern environmental zoning even existed.
Let's trace the logic of their defense along this timeline. Since 1935, the land was classified as dry. Fast forward to 2022, Brigade signs a joint development agreement, issues public notices, and gets 0 objections. Then we hit a really critical moment. In February 2026, the Madras High Court actually dismissed a public interest litigation against this very project. Why? Because the court concluded that the final wetland boundaries were still completely undecided under the Ramsar process. Yet just 3 months later, in May 2026, the SEIA revoked the clearance anyway based on those exact same wetland concerns.
Beyond just the land classification, Brigade is incredibly frustrated by the process itself. Quote, Brigade Group was not provided with any prior notice, personal hearing, and this revocation order had come as a complete shock. blatantly violates all principles of natural justice. They're arguing that pulling a validly granted clearance after substantial investments and construction have already begun and without even a fair hearing is just procedurally improper. Because of this, they've now taken the matter straight to the Supreme Court.
Section 5. Market and investor implications. While the legal teams battle it out in court, there are immediate, real-world financial realities hitting right now.
From a macro market perspective, the immediate impact on Brigade's stock valuation is a localized, bearish fluctuation of about 1 to 3%. Why relatively small? Well, Brigade has a massive, robust pan-India pipeline buffering the blow. This is ultimately a single 340-unit project. But make no mistake, while the overall corporate damage might be contained, the localized friction in the Chennai market is very real.
The financial fallout for the Morgan Heights project itself is pretty severe. First off, an immediate halt on all sales. If Brigade decides to reapply for a fresh environmental clearance by submitting a revised management plan, that process alone could trigger a 6 to 12-month delay. And during that time, the holding costs for the land just keep ticking upward. This ultimately pushes back monetization and drags down the project's overall internal rate of return. In real estate, profitability is intimately tied to regulatory timelines.
Section 6. Real Estate's ESG Era. Let's zoom out from this specific Chennai micromarket for a second.
What does this all mean for the future of Indian real estate development? I want you to think about how this localized event signals a massive shift in how development interacts with environmental compliance. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it shows ESG is no longer just a nice-to-have corporate pledge for the annual report. It is a strict, hard regulatory hurdle. Across the board, environmental norms are tightening. Authorities are clearly not afraid to use their power to revoke clearances retrospectively. For the industry, this means your execution speed is now severely bottlenecked by environmental compliance. Consequently, we're likely going to see investor capital shifting away from developers entangled in these types of disputes and moving toward those with cleanly cleared pipelines.
I'll leave you with this final thought. The balance between rapid urban expansion and strict ecological preservation is officially the new frontier of real estate risk. Even a top-tier developer aiming for net zero by 2045 can find a multi-million-dollar project halted overnight by a single wetland compliance clause. How the industry adapts to this hyper-regulated reality is exactly what will dictate the future of our urban skylines. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.